Good afternoon. Thanks for joining our webinar today. I'm Bethany Maddox, Vitech's University Program Manager. It's my pleasure to share with you a few of the new features in Core 8. If you have any questions during the webinar, please send them to me through the Q&A panel. I'll try to address questions as they come if I can work them into the current topic. So please just send them to me as you think of them. Just in case you have a question that I need a hand with, I also have Cliff Levine with me today. Cliff is one of our principal systems engineers and has done a great job supporting our university program over the years. So don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. If I can't answer it, I'll pass the mic over to Cliff. Here's a quick rundown of what I have in store for you. There's a lot of information here today. And as if this wasn't enough, this only scratches the surface of what's new in Core 8. So after today's webinar, I'll email each of you a PDF with full details of what you can expect in Core 8. So without further ado, let's get started talking about first impressions in Core 8. When you first launch Core 8, you're going to notice that some things are not exactly where you left them. You'll also notice some new things too. So let's take a few moments to talk about what's changed, starting with perspective. The system definition language used in Core is highly detailed, and navigating this language was once described as using a jeweler's loupe to inspect your system. You have a great insight at the detail level, but it's very difficult to abstract and understand at the higher level. Perspectives will allow you to focus on the aspects of a model that are most relevant to you at the current time. Essentially, they allow you to specify what attributes and relationships you want to see in an element's property sheet. They effectively apply a filter through which you view your model. Notice the drop-down selection in the top toolbar. This is where you used to find facilities. We'll talk more later about where those went. Here, you see a property sheet with full detail. This is what you're used to seeing. Here's what you'll see with the Essentials perspective selected. Notice that several of the attributes from the full detailed perspective have been suppressed. Relationships are also down selected. Perspectives can be role-based, level-based, or anything you want based. We've established a few perspectives to get you started. If you'd like to create your own perspective, first switch over to Schema mode. Then you can right-click in the Perspectives pane and select New Perspective. Then the Classes and Attributes pane in the lower right-hand corner is where you'll define your perspective. If you like the ones we created for you, but it just needs a little tweak, here you can also edit the predefined perspective. Let's switch over to Core and take a look. Okay. Let's select a component here. And right now you see I have the perspective set at full detail. Notice, especially in this area, that when I switch over to Essentials, some of the items are suppressed. And it does it in such a way that you don't really see that something has been suppressed. So as I said before, there's a variety of options that we have predefined for you. Now let's switch over to Schema mode and take a look at how you edit them. So once I've switched over, I'm going to click Perspectives here on the left-hand side. And then I'll select the Essentials perspective. You see I have a short description of it. And then I can select a class. What's in each perspective is specific to a class. So if I want to look at the document class, I can then come over here to Attributes and Relationships and select the check mark indicating what is included in that perspective. So in the Essentials perspective, when viewing the document class, the audit logs, creation stamp, creator, and so on are the attributes that are available. And as I scroll down the list, I'll also find the relationships down here at the bottom. Now to create a new one, I'm going to right-click in the Perspectives pane, select New Perspective, name it anything I want, and then I can come over here and define it. Any questions with perspectives before I move on? If you have one, you can use the question dialog, or you can use the raise hand feature. Okay, well, let's switch back over to PowerPoint then. Uh-oh, it didn't save my place. There we go. So now the perspective selection is where you used to find facilities. Yes, we've moved your cheese. But before we talk about where it went, let's get a little background on facilities. From the early days of CORE, we've made use of the concept of facilities to filter the complete collection of element classes down to the subset of immediate interest. You used to find this in the Explorer toolbar, and selecting a different facility updated the list of classes, and therefore the elements that you could see. In Core 8, the concept of facilities remains, but the navigation approach has changed. Rather than selecting the facility of interest from a drop-down menu in the toolbar, all available facilities are now shown as part of the navigation tree in the project list pane. The intent is to seamlessly integrate this concept as you navigate your model while also increasing the visibility of the other available facilities. By default, a project opens to the Essentials facility. You can then expand whatever facility or facilities are of interest for the work at hand. If you'd like to change this default, you can do so in the Administrative Tools panel. Just adjust that setting, and the next time you open CORE, you'll be greeted with the facility that you chose. So let's move on to packages. Traditionally, navigation within CORE has been database-centric. To access the element of interest, you started by drilling down into the specific class and then down into folders until you found what you were looking for. For those with a database-centric frame of reference and a command of the CORE language, this really worked. With Core 8, we raised the question of alternate navigation approaches, not intended to replace the database-centric paradigm, but rather to complement it. We hypothesized several role-based structures, level-based structures, view-based structures, to name just a few. To enable all of these approaches, we leveraged the SysML approach of packages. In SysML, packages are fundamentally tools for model management. They're a type of container that can hold diagrams, elements, and other packages. Core now includes a package class that enables this behavior. As packages are created, they're shown in the project list pane, enabling you to implement whatever packaging and navigation approaches are desired. So you create packages just like you do other elements in Core, the most common method being to simply double-click on the class. To add an element to the package, you can either establish a package by relationship or just drag the element and drop it on top of the package. Let's switch out to Core again and take a look. Uh-oh. I created that perspective a minute ago and didn't do everything that Core needed. I'm just going to delete that perspective I changed a minute ago so that we can move on. There we go. Okay. So you see up here we have packages, and it can be expanded or collapsed. And these are the packages that have been established for this project that already exist. So I can take a look at those packages and see what's in them. Now, if I want to create a package, what I'm going to do is come down here to the package class, and I'll just double-click, and we'll call it package 01. And you'll notice now up here I have it available to me. It's also now part of the package class. So let's come up here. Now we see it, but I haven't put anything in my package. So let's put some things in the package. It's actually really easy to do this. I'm going to multi-select a handful of elements and drop them in my package. And I'll be greeted with this specification dialog, which is saying, do I want to make it packaged by? And I do, so I'll click OK. And then at that point, I've moved those things to my package dialog, or to my package so that I can view it. And it looks like it didn't take my multi-select. It's just going to move them over one at a time. So we'll do several of them. I'm not sure which ones it did and didn't get, but now I have a variety of things in my package class. Let's switch on back to PowerPoint here and take a look at the Model Assistant. This represents a fundamentally new capability in core as we branch into truly assisted engineering. The intent is to better highlight the power and integration of a true model-based approach while reducing some of the framework details required to successfully implement MBSE. The initial capability provides a powerful foundation that we expect we're going to build upon going forward. The individual Model Assistant rules are enabled or disabled per user, and you can do this in the Project Explorer. Just click here where it says Model Assistant, and you'll see this dialog, and the check marks here are how you enable or disable the features. There are 5 options in the Model Assistant, and all 5 are enabled by default. Let's take a look at each of the Model Assistant's capabilities, starting with the Show Root Function Views option. Although logical and physical representations are usually shown separately, they are still views of the same model. Much as you can pick up a cube and rotate it to look at any given face, this piece of the Model Assistant allows you to look at your model from the perspective of interest. When working in the component class, if the component you are working on has a root function, Core will display the view tabs for the related logical representations. Let's see that live in Core. I want to take a look at the component class here, and I'm going to select my physical context. And here are the tabs you're accustomed to seeing. These are your component views, the hierarchies and spiders and behavior block diagrams. But because we then have over here on the right all of the functional views. So if this component is allocated to a function, you're going to see them right over there and be able to jump right to them. This particular component isn't, so let me select another one. I'm not sure this one has an allocated to relationship either, or I am in the wrong perspective, possibly. But once I find one that's allocated to a component, I can switch over to my behavior view right from the component class. So that's where this one does. It's just a beginning to help you connect the dots between your physical side and your behavior side. Moving on, for many years, Core has had a filter that allows you to check for functions in your model that have not been allocated to a component. Because the condition of, yes, Cliff?
Can I jump in for a second?
You bet. I'd love to hear from you.
Okay. One thing about Model Assist, when Model Assist creates a function for a component, if you remember, that allocated to or performs relationship has an attribute called behavior type. Mm-hmm. And that behavior type is set to, automatically that is, it's set to integrated root.
Right.
Okay, and only those integrated root functions will show up, so to speak, when you click on a graphic. So it will basically go to the graphic of the integrated root function.
Good point, Cliff. And for everybody else on the line, Cliff is actually, what he's discussing is the merge of 2 different features of this Model Assistant. The second one we'll talk about in a minute, but the boil down on the last chart on this one was simply that it's only going to show these views when there's a allocated to relationship with the integrated root behavior type. So we'll talk more about how we get there and how the Model Assistant is going to get you there in just a minute. Thanks for clarifying that, Cliff. That's an important detail that is easy for me to overlook, but means an awful lot to a systems engineer.
Okay.
So going on, for many years, Core has had a filter that allows you to check for functions in your model that have not been allocated to a component. Because the condition of completeness also includes checking that leaf-level functions are uniquely allocated to a single component, the Model Assistant has an option that will alert you when you are creating a second allocated to relationship. Now, I'm not going to jump out into Core on this one because the screenshot I have here is really helpful. If you see here this dialog that's on screen, if you attempt to allocate a component or a function to more than one component, you will see this. And you have three options. You can replace the current allocation with the new. You can use the middle button to add it and thus have the function allocated to two components, or you can change your mind through the cancel button. So this is a really great feature that's just going to alert you and give you some choices before you allocate it to more than one component. Root functions are an essential connector between logical and physical aspects of the model, essentially serving as a container for the behavior performed by the component. This is what Cliff was alluding to just a moment ago. The Auto Create Root Functions option automates the process of creating a root function for every component you create, moving this sometimes cumbersome task behind the scenes. Not only does the Model Assistant create the root function, it also allocates that function to the component you created, and then the behavior type of that allocation would be integrated root, as Cliff mentioned earlier, thus winding back to the first feature we talked about. You then, from a component, could look at the behavioral views. So let's take a look at this one in Core. It's kind of fun to watch this one. So I'm going to, right here, now note the number of components I have. I have 9 components and 35 functions in my top level. I'm just going to here create a new component, and now I have 36 functions. If I jump over now, I have a function called perform component 1 functions. So it uses the name of my component in the name of my new function so that they're very closely aligned. And then down here I have my allocated to relationship with the behavior type of integrated root. So here's where we really start moving towards assisted engineering. The auto-relate on allocation will help you to reinforce the alignment, integration, and synchronization of your models by ensuring that every function performed by a component is in the behavior model of that component's corresponding root function. As I said before, the Model Assistant you see in Core 8 today is just a foundation. So let's take a look real quick at this one in Core. This one's kind of fun. So I'm going to get into Core here, and I'm going to look at the perform physical context functions, and let's just view an activity diagram. Now note this construct here. I've got this, and there's nothing after the construct. Now I'm going to switch over to my property sheet, and I'm going to add a new function into my decomposed by. So I've placed this in the decomposition, and I would see it in a hierarchy, but what the Model Assistant is going to do is it's going to go ahead and put it in my behavior as well. Now the Model Assistant doesn't know where I wanted it, so it's going to put it here at the end so that I can then manipulate it where I want it. But it's just keeping that alignment between the decomposition of the function itself and the behavior of the function. So before I move on, there's a lot of information here in the Model Assistant. Oops, I'm sorry, I actually have one more. I'm skipping ahead. There's one more option in the Model Assistant before I go on. And this is the Auto Allocate on Decomposition. And what this does is as your model expands to a greater level of detail and to add multiple layers of decomposition, it's important that some elements inherit the conditions of their parents. So with this feature enabled, when you add a function to another function's decomposition, Core is going to look up the line to the parent and find what component it's allocated to. and then allocate that child function to the same component as the parent. As I said before, this is just the foundation of what we expect to build upon. We're really excited about the potential of assisted engineering that the model assistant's just beginning. Are there any questions? If you want to type it into the Q&A field or raise your hand to let me know that you're typing, I will pause for just a moment so we can talk about the model assistant. Cliff, is there anything I glossed over or a finer detail, such as the one you mentioned before, that would help understanding of what the model assistant can do?
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. Well, with no questions, I'll just move right on ahead. So this next new capability in Core 8 has had such an enormous impact on the way I use Core. It's kind of like, have you ever gotten a new electronic gadget, maybe a new cell phone, and you thought it was cool, but you didn't really need it? Then a month later, you wonder how you ever lived without it. And this is how I feel about the new diagram framework. It's been that for me. So in Core 8, now virtually anything you want to do to visually develop your system definition can be done through drag-drop. You see here on the left a more menu-based option where you used to be able to do things. Now the picture on the right, there's a construct pane here, and we've got items we can drag and drop. I'm going to talk more about that here in just a second. That's actually called the diagram palette. And the diagrams now include this over on the right-hand side of the screen. You can toggle it on or off if you need a little more space, and I sometimes do that. Each diagram contains 3 tabs on the palette, and you can see those here. The construct tab gives you a selection of diagram constructs so that you can drop right onto your diagram, and that's what you're seeing right here. So I can just take that select construct, drag and drop it on, and it's going to put that in my diagram. On the Key Entities tab, which is the one we're picturing here, you're going to find a selection of classes and their elements that are relevant to the diagram you are currently viewing. Just drag and drop that element right onto the diagram to insert it. Then from the All Entities tab, you can drag and drop an element onto another one to create relationships that are not necessarily reflected in the view. So if I happen to be looking at an activity diagram, then I can, if I think, oh gosh, there's this requirement that was supposed to be associated with that function, I can flip over to the All Entities tab, grab my requirement, drop it on, and now they're related. So let's take a look at this in Core. This is, like I said, this is the big one for me that's really changed how I use Core every day. And make that a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. So if I want to put a select construct on, I can just drag it here. I'm going to put that at the end of the branch, maybe throw on a brand new function. And I could come over. I realize what I'm doing doesn't necessarily make sense given the particular items I'm dragging on and whatnot. I just want to show the ease with which you can drag things on there. If this function needs a trigger, and just drag a trigger on there. If I want to use one of my existing triggers, I'd use this one. If you want more of the finer details about this drag drop capability, I've actually done a screencast available on our website, which will walk you through some of the finer details of this. I am so excited about this capability in the diagram palette and how you can now drag drop in order to do things. We'll go ahead and answer a question that's come up. Alice has asked if you're going to be able to see a recording of this, and you will. All of our webinars are archived on our website at vitechcorp.com. So if you have any other questions, keep them coming. I will try to answer them as we go.
Yeah, Bethany?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another point?
Yes.
You'll notice that when you add functions to a diagram, if you have the Model Assist enabled, then that function will automatically allocate those new functions to the top level function. Mm-hmm. And this time the behavior type attribute will be atomic.
Great point, Cliff. Let's take a look at that. Let's open the, actually I think function 1 I did another way. Function 2, here's this one. This is one I dragged and dropped on here. Look at everything that happened. I just grabbed a new node and dropped it on here. And now with my function 2 that we did, it's allocated to the component that the parent function is allocated to. It decomposes the parent, and we've got a trigger, and there's your behavior type atomic on the allocated to. So great point, Cliff, on how some of these things all relate to each other. That's something I hadn't necessarily been able to connect. But it is an important note that although you can now design, you can do some of your work visually, the rigor of what's behind that in core and the database-centric approach is still there. And so that's a very important note that although you're doing it visually, it's building relationships, and there's a lot of detail that's happening behind the scenes for you. So this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to drag drop in Core 8. I work with 2 monitors, and I often have an element list on one screen and a diagram on the other. Another thing drag drop enables is I can just drag an element from my list in one window and drop it on the diagram in another. Core prompts me then with the relevant relationships. And anytime you're dragging and dropping things across, if there's a need for it to prompt, it's going to. And as you can see with the screenshot here on screen, it didn't necessarily need to because there's only one relationship, but it's prompting you anyway. It's going to err on the side of being conservative and making sure you're aware exactly of what you're relating to what and how. So this is really helpful, this prompting, if you are still learning the system definition language in Core, and it's going to guide you through that language as you learn it. Which is especially relevant for our university program students. This new diagram framework is so much more than what I have time to discuss today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I'll send you a PDF of the What's New in Core 8 document. That way you can check this out and see the depth of this new capability. It's really exciting. There's a lot there, and it can really change the way you use it every day. The Core has always excelled at presenting technically correct and technically complete graphic representations. Unfortunately, comprehensive diagrams can complicate communication. Core 8 introduces the SysML concept of eliding content, which is more commonly known as selectively hiding content. This is going to enable you to focus your audience on the areas of interest without having to manage and synchronize separate artifacts. So gone are the days of recreating your diagram in PowerPoint or Visio so that you can help your audience get your desired or slightly reduced view. Individual diagram objects can be selected and marked to hide or show using the toolbar command. And you see the toolbar command right up here. Diagrams now support 4 display modes to leverage this capability. Standard is the traditional complete view you've always had in Core, and that's what we have here in this top image. Now, Marked is going to help you manage which items have been selected to be hidden. This one's really helpful, and it's going to show that selection with a dotted outline, which you see in this middle one. We have Hidden, Recover, and Information, and those are marked. Hidden with Label makes the selection disappear altogether, which is what you see down here. There will be a tag in the upper right-hand corner to alert you that some content is hidden. The layout of the diagram is also compacted so that the only visual cue that you've hidden content is that flag. And you'll notice here this third branch has also been hidden and things are compacted here. Again, the only visual cue is going to be that flag. Now, the hidden option removes the flag entirely. So be very cautious when you use this setting. There's definitely a use for this when you're working with customers so that they can focus on what you're showing, not the fact that there's something missing. Just don't forget that you use this setting if there's no visual cue at all that anything's missing. Let's get into Core and take a look at this one. This is really neat. Let's hide all of this that I added before. So I'm going to use Shift-click and multi-select all of these, including their items that are being passed. And we are going to hide these. And so this button right here is the toggle so that I can hide what I have selected. Now I've clicked that, but you don't see any change here. And that's because if I click here, I have standard. And remember, standard is just going to show it the way you always did. If I switch over to marked, you see now that they are outlined with a dotted line. Oops, I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. Go back here. If I switch over to hidden with label, they've disappeared. Everything's compacted, and I now have my elided tag in the corner. And then again, hidden takes away all visual cues. So if you are regularly hiding something for a presentation to a customer, leaving it in marked mode for when you are working is a great idea, so that you have that conscious awareness all the time of the things that you're showing, but you can still see them when you're working in your model. And then just switch over to hidden when you want to present. Switch back over to PowerPoint here. So I'm just as excited about this next feature as I was about drag and drop. It doesn't quite have the daily use, but it definitely has a big impact. Take a look at the diagram on screen. We've often been asked how you could insert a picture on a diagram, and until now you've had to recreate your diagram in another tool in order to do that. Well, goodbye Visio. Now you can insert images for any element on a diagram. The images really help to tell the story here. Naturally, you can use the image of your choice, and this particular one was created with images that we had on our own hard drive. But just in case you're short on graphics, we've included with Core 8 an image library of over 3,000 stock images. So let's switch over to Core and see this in action. So here I'm viewing our geospatial library component and its structure behavior block diagram. We already have pictures that have been designated for this, but we've toggled them off. If you'd like to designate one, you can just select your element of interest, and you can do this on any diagram. Just thought it'd be nice to get out of functions for a few minutes. And right here, this little image icon is the one that you'll use to select your image. And right now I can click it and see what has been selected. And this is one of the ones I have on my computer. If I wanted to use one of the over 3,000 stock images we included with you, I could use this resource library here. And those are all included in Core 8. So you can do that. And then once you have them selected, there's a little toggle icon right here, which turns that on and off. And I actually have those selected for all of our components. And when you're working with images, it's kind of nice to turn off the background color. And maybe you can turn off the grid lines for a really good looking presentation. And that really smooths things out and makes it look nice and smooth. And that's how we achieved this one that you're seeing over here in PowerPoint. So this next one is just for the University Edition, and this was in response to you. Our instructors, our students have told us for some time, we love Core, but working collaboratively on our small team projects is a pain. And so we spent a lot of time talking to instructors that came to our user group event that we had in October to find out how we could better meet this need. And at that point, we'd already released Core 8. We actually released it on the first day of that event. But we knew this capability was too important to hold on to until we do another big release. And we don't often release new capability in a service pack, but this was worth the exception. And Service Pack 1 for Core 8, they've used this capability to have dramatically enhanced team collaboration capabilities in Core University Edition. So it now supports a publish, change, merge process similar to that in the commercial version of Core. The new export dialog is going to look like this. So you'll just click File, Export. And this is what you'll see. The descriptions of each option should let you know exactly which one you want. So when you first start your team project, establish who's your team manager. Then that person can set up the team project and export the project baseline, which is the first option here under Collaborative Team Project. This baseline can then be sent to the team for each person to contribute to. That person will import that data and do their work. As you often need to do, you have some work in progress. You need to save it before you send it back to your team, and that's what the work in progress option is going to allow you to do, so that you can work on it for several days, save your work, and then when you're ready, when it's time to turn your work back into your team manager and merge everybody's work together, you use the Project Database Changes option. This is going to export only the changes you made since you received the baseline. So then the team manager gets all of these change files back, imports them into the project, and starts back at the beginning of the cycle, exporting a project baseline and sending it to the team, and they'll work from there. So it's creating this cycle. You know, on the previous slide, I showed publish, change, merge. I really should have done this in a circle and shown that this was a cycle, so that you can utilize this set to do that. Now, when you're working in a team, it's important to know who did what. And we've added one more thing that's going to be important so you can do that. So we'd like you to be able to name your users. So before you do any work, once you've received your baseline, import it, and then click on Tools and Rename User. And here you'll be able to designate your username. You don't need it to log in, but it is going to tag your username onto your work. As you can see here, I created my name is B. Maddox, and I'm now listed as the creator of an element that I created. Well, this concludes what I've prepared for you today. We'll take another moment just to prompt if there are any questions before we go. This is definitely the time to ask them. I will, while we wait to see if any questions come in, reiterate that a recording of this will be available on our website. Just go to vitechcorp.com, click on Services, and then Archive, and that's where you'll find our archive of recordings. It should be available within about 24 hours. There is just a little bit of processing there. If you have any comments, questions, we'd love to talk to you about it. Our community website, community.vitechcorp.com, is the perfect place to do that. We have a section of that has been established just for the university program, so just make sure you post there and we can get a conversation going on anything that you'd like to talk about. I think that there's a few things here that are going to have a really good impact in the university edition, and gosh, especially that new collaborative work process that we've put in there for you. Well, there's no more questions, so I guess I will sign off today. And if you have any questions, you can always reach me. My email address is support@vitechcorp.com, and I'd be happy to help you out in any way that I can. Thank you and have a great day. And thank you, Cliff, for joining and supporting us.